welcome everybody, Croeso, to our second Talk Design event. And our guest this morning is Sarah Hughes. And it's quite weird, we were just talking earlier. I haven't met Sarah before this online meet, even though she lives probably only a few miles away from myself in Bangor, just a hop over the bridge onto Anglesey. But I've kind of got to know Sarah through the stuff on her Instagram feed, really, and it just caught my attention. But I do know that obviously you are a designer and you work with textiles and specifically performance textiles. So the chat today really is about working in that field, working remotely, because I think it's something that you've done for a longer time than us in the COVID situation. So you've got some lessons that you can share there, and just about your personal process and essentially what you do and how you do it, and hopefully, well, not hopefully, but I know it will inspire our product design students who are listening in. So Sarah, thank you very much. So can you start by telling us a little bit about yourself, your background, and what it is that you're exactly doing?
Okay, so I probably started probably like you guys, studying GCSE art, loved it, doing A-level art, and then I went on to do a foundation course at Shrewsbury, which is where I specialised in textiles. Went on to Huddersfield University. They very kindly accepted me at the time. And it was a Bachelor of Science in Textile Design, so it was quite a process-led course. So I had access to lots of industry machinery, and there was textile testing. So it gave me quite a good understanding of the process involved in textile design. So it's not a case of drawing pictures. It's, you know, there's a lot more goes on in the background. So after university, it was a sandwich course, and I went to Leicester. There was a hosiery manufacturer who supplied lots of high street stores. Most of them have gone into administration now. So Woolworths, BHS, Mothercare, but they worked to Marks and Spencer standards. So I had a very good grounding in that year out from university. I worked in the quality assurance department there, and then after I graduated, that was my first job. So I became the quality assurance supervisor at the time, and I thought I was so ace at the time, even though I was just getting paid £100 a week. And I was supposed to be in charge of these ladies who'd been there for like 30 years. They were so amazing, and I was so stupid at the time. I was so embarrassed when I look back at my time there, but it was hugely beneficial to me. Gave me, you know, a lot of grounding, a lot of insight into the factory life, which is my passion. I love the factory. It's that's where it all started, really.
Good. So I'd imagine there was a lot of people there, as you mentioned, with a lot of experience in the making and stuff. How much did you learn possibly from those who were actually putting the clothes together compared to what you were probably thinking of that industry before?
Yeah, everything from them. So whatever you think you know now, honestly, you have to go and find somebody called Pat and Jean and Mick, and then you have to really, really listen to those guys, because they're the ones who are going to mold you and just kind of ground you. So it's having patience to learn everything, and not having, just putting your ego aside, really. I think that makes you a better designer, just sort of willing to learn and listen to the people who have experience in that field. So
I'm kind of interested now. So how did you go from, I'm assuming that they were kind of tights and hosiers. So how do you flip from there to performance textiles? Because the stuff I see the company that you're working with is kind of it's a complete extreme to that. So how did that happen? On purpose or accidental?
Well, it was an accident, actually. Yeah, after I left Leicester, I went to Brighton and worked in a pie shop for a while, which was amazing. The pies were great, lovely. But I saw an advert in a trade publication called Draper's Record, and there was an advert for a job up in Porthmadog and with Gelert. And I always knew that I wanted to move back home to Wales, so it was an opportunity to do that, and so that's where I went. So Brighton to Porthmadog. I wasn't quite ready to leave Brighton, but I was, it was an opportunity to come home, and I don't regret it for 1 minute. So that's how I landed in performance textiles as a garment technologist. So I started there in 1999.
And your work, and I don't know. Again, I know that you work with Jottnar. Are you freelance and are you tied to them, or do you work for other brands as well? Or
yeah. So my contracts come to an end with Jottnar. So I was in industry for from 1999 to 2011. So working for Gelert primarily. I did some teaching in between that, having a couple of children, but Gelert was a fantastic place to work. So they're kind of, they've been taken over now. It's a shame the whole shape of that company has changed. But they were a family-run company who providing really good value for money, performance textiles. But that, because of the grounding that I had with Marks and Spencer standards, I kind of carried that through to that business. And everything was of a fantastic standard, quality and standard, really. It was always difficult trying to make something look like a Jottnar piece, for example, but you had the budget of I don't know, something from Poundland, so it's always trying to make things work. But we did it. We had a fantastic team. So yeah, that's how I kind of got the job with Jottnar, really, having that.
But I'm also imagining that you could have the best ever performance textile available, but if the clothing is ill-fitting or unsuitable for the job that it needs to do, it's not going to be a success, and it's not going to support that brand to build their base and build their customers, really. So how involved would a designer like you be in the researching element, or finding out what the next year what the climbers need, or is that something that the company would do and say work to these spec, or are you involved in that part as well?
Yeah, you are involved. I think most of the people I've worked with have a very clear vision of their brand, so that kind of narrows down where you look for inspiration. My experience has just kind of helped me to kind of focus straight away. But if you imagine a funnel, all the ideas at the top, everything goes in, colors, shapes, what other people are doing, what the market's doing, and then you kind of filter down and just get rid of stuff that's not relevant anymore. But yeah, most people I work with have working for a commercial operation, the parameters are quite narrow, so you're not able to put do what you want. So again, that's where your ego has to be parked, because you might run the risk of the whole collection being slashed, having spent 2 or 3 weeks working on it. So I think a dialogue first off when you meet your clients is super important, just to make sure you're all singing off the same song sheet. And
you'd obviously be looking at the competitors. So how much of it is, where do they position themselves? How much of it is reacting to what other people do, or how much of it is actually just kind of ploughing their own furrow and expecting other people to catch up with them, or is that a fine balance? Because I'd imagine if you go too far, you might lose your customers.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a balancing act. So ultimately, you have to understand your end user and what they want out of their apparel, and then you kind of yeah, just absolutely look at what the competition are doing. You're never trying to reinvent the wheel. You have to remember that. So you have to look at the features and benefits that you can offer above and beyond your competition. So it might just be a color. It might, there are limitations to what you can do with a jacket, for example. You've always got two arms, you've always got a hood, and I think you can over-engineer and over-design things. So I think keeping a good discipline is critical, everything once you've got a signature look for a brand, then everything else kind of falls into place because you've got that foundation.
Yeah. I'd like to question a bit more, really, because a conversation we have always with our students is one is that you've got to trust the process and work through that process, and also it's always, what's your inspiration? What are you looking at outside of what you normally look at? So I don't know, what's your personal, when Jottnar or a company says we need a new coat, have you got a personal process that you work through in that initial phase before you start getting on the nitty-gritty and actual development?
It's usually not outdoor gear that inspires me, I suppose, because I look at it for all the time. There are a few brands that that are obviously kind of leaders, and you always look to them for that their discipline and what is interesting what they're doing, but they don't always get it right. It's hit and miss sometimes, especially with color. That's the biggest thing. Some people will put like a very small volume of a color in just to entice people in, but what people actually buy is black and blue and red, those kind of core outdoor colors especially. But yeah, inspiration, I like fusing ideas sometimes. So like if I can look at a component from somewhere else and make it work, just to add a zhuzh of color or a shape or just something a bit interesting, because it can get a bit samey, especially in the outdoor industry. It's quite a niche sector. So yeah, just don't be frightened to look outside of what's going on in that market that you're designing, and fuse ideas together. It might not work, but it might just spur you on to an idea elsewhere. And
I'm probably imagining or assuming here that obviously you'll come up with a range of ideas, or you'll come up with something, but then the conversation then is with the people. There's other people are involved in the decision making or the final choices. So how much, and it might be something that our students, sometimes you get fixed on the first idea, and we always tell them, well, just keep designing, keep going, and you might come back to that one. But how much back and forth would you experience with, and I know it's slightly different once you're experienced and you've got a good relationship going with that company, but how much back and forth is there then between kind of your ideas and what the company is thinking or wanting?
I think that's unlimited, really. If you've got a deadline, then yes, you have to keep to the critical path. That's important, but it's not unusual for the first draft to get completely slashed. You've put your heart and soul into it. You've been designing it for 3 or 4 weeks, and you think it's ace, and then the next minute, cross. We won't do that. And you just think, oh, blimey heck, and it's usually really stripped back to, you know, basics really. So, you know, kind of, so yeah, don't be frightened of putting all those bells and whistles on in the beginning, but don't be surprised if they get taken off, because it usually happens.
And what or which coping mechanisms have you developed? What top tips have you got for our students? Because you know, the first time or the first couple of times somebody tells you, it's not quite right, or we need to rework this, and it can be demoralizing. So how do you keep yourself going? How do you keep the mojo going?
I think 20 years has helped me to toughen up, but I've you know, cried my eyes out many a time, just going, no, oh, why don't they like it? You know, but it's just, you just have to separate yourself from it. If you want to design commercially, you have to toughen up, and it is a job at the end of the day. You're very fortunate to work in an industry that you enjoy, that you're very passionate about, but it is a job at the end of the day. Separate it from your personal life, because it's not healthy to to carry it on your shoulders. It's exhausting. So,
and then I suppose once the designs are finalized, there'd be a handover point or something that what does that look like in your industry, and what is handed over, and when is your job done, and then it's on to the next project, or
so it's so I, as a consultant, I offer a managed service from start to finish. So it's from concept through to production, and I'm the kind of custodian of all the, you know, the literature really. So the design work that's kind of there, and once that's finalised, I'll produce something called a tech pack. So it's a really comprehensive document, which has got the fine detail about which fabrics, the cost of everything, the zips, the components, the size, the wash care labels, the size of the branding, the positioning of things. It's like a Bible of factory ready documents that we hand over to the clients. So and that's another thing, you know, it's as a freelancer, you know, it's kind of quite hard really. You could be like in and out, you know, but we want you to do that, but don't get attached to it, because, you know, you can be like dropped like that. But it's like I said, it's a job, you know, you've just got to do what you've got to do and move on. It's
so how long roughly would you know, from a brief to that handover point, how long would that be?
Oh God. So, I mean, when I'm designing and developing an apparel range, it usually takes 18 months. So, you know, from concept to production. So you have your launch date and work backwards from that, and soon realize you've only got 2 weeks to design a collection, and you've got 2 weeks to do this and this. But we usually go through 2 or 3 rounds of prototyping, and then we'll test the size, we'll test fabrics. If I'm not too sure about a fabric, I'll get some samples made in 2 or 3 different variations, and then there's all the other things that go on in the background, like lab dipping for colors, color matching zips. You know, it's endless.
And in terms of, would you source and converse with the factories? How much involved with the manufacturing do you get?
Yeah, every single day. So they become my best friends. So I get like 30 emails a day during peak period, and it's exhausting sometimes, but you know, your fingers are on fire typing, but it's just making sure that every single detail of the garment is perfect for when it goes into production. You know, the sizing of everything, it's the stitching, it's endless.
I have a question has come in. We'll take a slight detour, and I've just had this question from Simon. Do you want to ask it, Simon, or do you want me to ask it?
Yeah, I can ask it.
Yay, thank you, Simon.
So you're in performance textiles. Do you
Yeah.
think the seamless clothing technology Gymshark are developing and improving for sportswear will take off and become the industry standard?
Seamless. Do you mean like the circular knits? That's seamless.
Yeah. So where they use like the thousands of needles in one machine to create essentially a sock-like knitting approach to clothing.
Yeah, I mean, this technology has been around for quite a while. I think it's it's fabulous as a performance piece, not having seams in critical areas where that you're at risk of rubbing around your shoulders or around your waist or whatever. So yeah, I think it's here to stay, that technology, for sure.
Because I think they've taken the technology from, I think it was developed in the 80s, but they're the first company to bring it into the 21st century and actually run with it to make a products line.
Yeah, some of the machinery that I was working on 20 years ago in Leicester, in that hosiery factory, making circular net hosiery, it's exactly the same concept. So yeah, it's but yeah, as a performance garment, yeah, brilliant. It solves a lot of problems as well as a designer. It's and actually it's quite in terms of patterning, you can add a lot of interest to a circular knit just by looking at different structures within the knitwear. So you can make something look really interesting and make it work as a performance piece. You can have vented areas and yeah, so it's great. Hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Simon. I'd like to just, you've been working remotely. You mentioned something that you've been working remotely for years, and it's something obviously we've had to transition to work online much more, and companies are transitioning during the period that we're in as well. So probably the first question is, why work remotely from the beginning, or was it forced upon you? And then just share some top tips, if you can, in terms of how do you manage projects from a distance, and probably I don't know, I'm assuming you did you start before Zooms and video calls was kind of common? So yeah, possibly just talk about that a bit, please, Sarah.
Okay, so I decided to become a consultant after I forgot my children at school one day, and it was just the worst thing. And I thought, I can't carry on like this. So I left industry to be a better mother. Haven't looked back since. But and it is really, really difficult working from home. Really difficult. I think most people have had a taste of what it's like. It's not easy. You've got things around you. You've got hustle and bustle of stuff. You're distracted by washing up, TV, cups of teas, whatever. So you have to have that discipline. And right from the very start, I always used to get up in the morning, get dressed as if I was going to work. So I don't wear joggers. I don't wear, whatever. I get up, I put my makeup on, and I, get dressed as if I was going to work. So you've got that discipline from the in the morning. The day is varied, yes, and you're able to kind of work around it, but you have to try and structure your day to succeed, and prioritize. So when that little distraction of is there, like for me it's washing. I love washing and ironing. I'm a bit of a saddo, so I have to say stop, I've got to do this, and then I'll do the washing. So it's just discipline, and you learn that. It's
yeah. And in terms of setting up on your own and either freelancing or going as a consultant, because I know a number of our students, they've got side hustles going on while they're on uni. They do little side projects.
Yeah.
Probably for free, probably for beer, probably just for the experience. But once they start kind of year 3, or once they graduate, obviously they need to start paying some bills.
Yeah.
And I think it's always an awkward or a uncomfortable situation when somebody goes, right, how much do you want to get paid for this then? And they kind of don't know. So how cheap should people, or how not cheap should people price themselves? Or I don't know, any advice along those lines?
It's a really awkward thing to discuss, especially, well, even now, I don't like talking about money, but you have to, it's taken me 20 years to build my portfolio, my expertise. So when I quote for a job, I consider myself giving that 20 years of experience to somebody. For someone starting out, I think you just have to be confident in what you like, charge a daily rate. Don't take advantage. I always compare it to jobs I've had in the past, and I'd rather be earning something than nothing. So to gain experience, then just put yourself out there, and a nominal fee, negotiate with your client, and see what's reasonable and fair, but something that's going to make you feel valued as a designer, and then and they feel as if they're getting something. So I don't know, I know people, to put a monetary value on it as a, I don't know, it's as a startup, I don't know.
Yeah, but I think we tend to avoid that conversation. And is it better? It's probably better to have that conversation at the start, isn't it, rather than kind of at the end, so everybody kind of knows where they are, and this is going to be the cost, or this is what I'm going to do for you. And it might stop though something else just getting added to the list, and so on. Right. I've got my final question, and then we'll open it out to our students and fellow and colleagues. I've got 2 questions here, so you can pick one. So what's the greatest piece of advice you've ever been given? Or what's the greatest piece of advice you've been given, but you ignored it at the time, and you go, yeah, I should have listened to that?
Well, it's Pat and Jean again, isn't it, from that factory? They're the best people to listen to. So if they ask you to sweep the floor, you just do it because they know best. But the one thing that I always had, a great director a few years ago, and he always used to say, keep your eyes on the prize, so that's my goal now. So if I've always, when I'm designing something or working on something, it's kind of the end look that I've always got in my head, and then I work backwards from that and how I'm going to achieve that. Yeah. So it's that eyes on the prize.
Good advice. We've got a question from Daniel Lambert. Do you want to ask it, Daniel? And I forgot to ask Simon earlier. Switch your camera on as well.
Okay, sure. Thank you, by the way. So far, a lot of the stuff that you said has been really helpful. I just thought I'd ask maybe a random question that came up based on just a bit of research. I'm wondering if you use any modern software for your pattern making, such as Gerber. I came across one called Gerber when someone was asking for like tactical clothing to be made, maybe for like the army or the forces, and I came across it and got quite interested looking at it. I wondered if that's involved in any of your processes, or if you have a more like sort of traditional approach.
Yeah, Gerber's been around for a number of years, but I don't get involved with that. It's usually a factory process, so I don't generate patterns, so that'll be something the factory gets involved with, and it's usually to help them with sizing, grading, and lay plans. So that software does all that for them. It's an amazing piece of kit. So if you want to make an adjustment, if you've had a jacket sampled and you want to make an adjustment to the cuff or the shape of the sleeve or something, then they'll that software will facilitate that.
So
cool. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Daniel. So would you, Sarah, would you be building that first version of a coat, am I imagining you in a room cutting cloth up and sewing it together? Is that part of your process, or
no,
no?
It's not. I don't get that involved first off, because I work with, you know, very, very experienced manufacturing partners who make you know, exceptional product. So they're able to, or whoever you're working with, you know, they're able to make a prototype, first prototype, and you do tear it to pieces, you know, the first time it comes through. It might not be, you know, you'll cut things and stick things with, you know, staple things together until you've got the right cuts, and then I'll just usually send it back to them and they'll make the adjustments, or I'll, you know, remeasure it. And so yeah, it's a continuous back and forth process.
Thank you. Right. Any questions, ladies and gentlemen? I've switched to my, in case any hands go up.
Don't ask me anything.
Oh, I've got a question from Ed. Do you want to ask it, Ed, or do you want me to ask it? Okay, so the question is, and there's no need to apologize. He goes, it's a stupid question, but there's no such thing as a stupid question. But what exactly is a textile technologist? Okay.
So we call it a garment tech, GT, garment tech. So they're the people who the kind of do all the nitty gritty, really. So once the designer has you work closely with the designer, but once the design has been finished, then it's kind of passed on to the garment technologist, who then creates, you know, the finished product. So it's kind of a process. You're next in line. So you will work on the tech pack is your Bible, as I mentioned previously, and it's just like a really anal tick list, you know, going through everything in fine detail to make sure everything is perfect. So it's a really difficult job. It's, you know, it's measuring things and you know, adjusting things, and that's where the bulk of the work is with the factory. Approving lab dips, making sure colours right, making sure all the quality is right, you know, with the textile testing. So it's and you know, there'll be third parties involved in textile testing as well. So it's not unusual to use an outside, like a big body like ITS, Intertech, or, you know, so they'll verify you know, the quality of the fabric, if the mill is then able to do that. But I work with, again, you know, very, very reputable companies who are able to supply good quality product.
Is that Aled? Do you want to ask Aled? Can I bring you in?
Yeah, certainly. Thank you. Thanks very much, Sarah. I'm interested, really, how many factories do you work with, and where are those factories based?
So I've worked with hundreds of factories in the 20 years, mostly in the Far East. So I've traveled quite a lot to China, Vietnam, Indonesia, India. So that's where most of the bulk of my work has been over the last 20 years. And they're amazing at what they do. Not all of them, you know. So sometimes you turn up and there's a person wearing barefoot at a sewing machine, or people sleeping on clothing, and that's when I flip out. But you know, most people have been amazing. Yeah.
So are you employed by companies like Jottnar because you know the factories, or are you sort of introduced to the factories through the companies that commission you?
A bit of both. I've got quite a good black book of contacts. So yeah, I'm you know, pretty valuable as a consultant, really. So but yeah, it's a partnership, and you grow and you change together, and, you know, get introduced to new things all the time. So but yeah, that black book is it's important as a starting point, you know, in a relationship, for sure.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I've got another question, Sarah, from one of our students in first year has already done 1 year in Huddersfield, and she's now switched on to our product design. So I think she's particularly interested to know what you specialised in on your course, really.
Oh, I was a terrible student, but it was textile design, specialised in knitwear. So that's what I chose at university. There was like a print and textiles, woven bit as well, but I chose knitwear. So I had use of the Shimaseki knitting machines, which are able to produce really beautiful fabrics. There was a huge carding machine there as well, which later got shipped off to China, which was awful. But yeah, so I had quite a good grounding of, you know, how yarns were produced, right from, you know, fleece. It was kind of, you know, processed right through to the spinning, and then we'd knit it. So that's what I did. Yeah.
Thank you. Another question. They're coming in thick and fast now, but I think a number of students have got that dream really of working for themselves and setting up a business. But again, that is quite scary. So the question is, do you believe that working for a company for some years is valuable before moving on and trying to set something up, or should they just go for it from the start?
I would say go and work for a company, because then you know that there's nothing like industry experience, and it just helps your breadth of knowledge. It's very, very difficult working by yourself. Like there's no way that I could be doing this when I don't think I could have done, you know, being a consultant straight out of university. It would have been too difficult. You know, my industry experience is what's given me credibility as a designer, really. So even if it's volunteering or just whatever, you just need to try and build up your portfolio somehow, just doing anything.
And probably if you think, I don't know, if you want to start your own business and be your own boss, and you can go get that industry experience, you're building up your contacts list, you're building up the people that you know, your network. So when you then branch out on your own, you've got those contacts to begin with. I suppose you draw quite heavily on a network of people that you've worked with in the past or know, I'd imagine.
Yeah, completely. You know, I've got, you know, there's like 100 fabric people, there's, you know, 50 people who can supply zips and embroideries and threads, and, you know, it's just, you need all those people. And I don't know, there might be some people who are brave enough to do it, and you know, they might be totally amazing, but I think to give you some kind of grounding and credibility, it's best to get a little bit of experience, I think.
And I'm just aware of the time. I'm probably going to finish on this question, really. It's on the topic of specialization. I'll read it. I see a bit of different opinions on being a good all-rounder and specializing in a few key areas. Have you got any thoughts of this, or, you know, how has that played over your career? Is it worth being a highly focused specialist or kind of an all-rounder?
I've been kind of led in my career, really, just by jumping on opportunities as they've presented themselves to me. So I think to pigeonhole yourself is, I don't know, maybe quite dangerous. Just keep an open mind and just, take every single opportunity that's there. And don't be afraid to fail, because there's been so many times that I've done things which I thought have been stupid, and I still do it now. Honestly, there's still things that I do now, but if you don't try it, you will never ever know. So keep an open mind and just enjoy what you do.
Right, and this is going to be my last question. what product have you designed that you're most proud of? What would
Oh
you
my gosh.
frame and put up above your mantelpiece?
Okay, so it has to be the Ragnarok jacket for Jottnar. So that's I think it was retailing at £850. There was 10 different fabrics in it. They're just the best components. It was just delicious. It was just like a work of art and a real pleasure to work on. So.
And is it in your contract that you get a piece of clothing, or would you get a piece of clothing anyway after you've designed it?
I've got one, yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, Sarah, thank you. And we are going to draw it to a close. Thank you very much for your time this morning.
You're welcome.
I think I've enjoyed myself. I hope our students have enjoyed themselves as well. So many tips and lessons and knowledge shared there, and I hope it's inspired you people. And yeah, so thank you very much.